All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over those 4 problems that you put in your foldable yesterday. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use rips on that problem just so that we know that we're setting that up every time. A board that measures 18 inches is cut and now measures 10.8 inches. What is the percent of change? So what's the question asking me? The question is, what is the percent of change? Okay. The important information is I know that if I'm using the word cut, is that a percent increase or decrease? If I'm cutting something, it's going to get smaller. So we know that this is a decrease because of the word cut. Okay. What else is important? Well, the board was 18 inches. Okay. That's what I started with. And now it's 10.8 inches. Okay. So the 2 processes that you went over with in the video with me and that we talked about is to use a formula. And that formula is the amount of change divided by the original amount, okay? And then times 100, which really just means to put it in a percent because it's going to give you a decimal. Then you got to multiply by 100 to get a percent. And this will equal, I'm going to move that up just so you can see this. This is going to equal the percent of change. Okay, so this formula, you can use that, or you can set up a proportion. I love proportions because they solve so much math. Okay, so I could set up a proportion where I am doing the inches over percent and then solve it for the missing number. Okay, so I'm going to do both methods so that you understand them. So let's talk about the first one where it is the formula. Well, here's the deal. If a board measures 18 inches and I cut it, I don't know how much I cut off, but I now know it is 10.8. How do I find out how much it changed? How do I find out how much I cut off? Well, most of you understand that you have to do what to those 2 numbers? Subtract it, right? So let's go over here, just right here, and take 18 and subtract the 10.8. And I know that I line up my decimals when I subtract. So 18 minus the 10.8. I can take 8 from 0. I borrow. This becomes 7. That's 10. Gives me 2. Bring down my decimal. 0. 0 from 7 is going to give me 7. 1 from 1 is going to give me 0. So 7.2 is what I cut off. Okay? So this is the amount of the change. So if I'm going to use the formula, I'm going to do the formula first. If I use the formula, the amount of change is 7.2. This is the change. Okay. Well, the original amount is what the board was before I did anything to it. So what number is that? Well, that's that 18 inches right there. So the board was 18 inches. That is my original. So I cut off 7.2 inches. My original is 18 inches. This is the original number. That's a sad arrow. Okay. So what I know is to find percent of change, I have to divide. Well, we know that this line means divide, and we know when we divide, the top number always goes in the house. So 7.2 divided by the 18. 18 does not go into 7. 18 goes into 72 4 times because 4 times 8 gives me 32, and 4 times 1 is 4, 5, 6, 7. So 72, my decimal goes straight up. So this equals 0.4. That's a problem. That's a decimal number. I need a what? A percent. So remember, Dr. Pepper, to turn a decimal into percent, I can either multiply it by 100 or just take this and go 1, 2. It equals 40%. Okay? So that's going to be my answer. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but with a proportion. So inches. Ignore that we just did all that. Now let's act like we're doing it from scratch. What is my board? My board is 18 inches. That's why I'm putting it on top because I have inches over percent. If that's the length of my board, it is 100% of the board. Percent means 100 out of 100. Okay. So because that's what the board is, it doesn't matter if it's 7 inches. It's still 100% of it, right? Whatever it is 100%. I want to know what is the percent of change. Well, the same thing. I am going to take that and find out what changed, right? And that's where I did the subtraction right over here. So I can take that 7.2. Well, 7.2 times 100, okay, is going to give me 720. Divided by 18 is going to give me 40%. So it's going to give me the same answer. And again, I always start with my lonely one, multiply diagonally, divide by the other, it equals the answer. It's going to give me 40%. Okay. Okay, let's try another one. Again, we're going to rip these so that we're in our good habits. A student grew from 60 inches to 66 inches in height. What is the percent of change? Well, what is the percent of change? Okay. Question mark there. Important information is I grew. So if I'm growing, I'm increasing, right? So the word grew is going to mean to increase. Important information is I was 60 inches and now I'm 66 inches. Okay. So again, I can work a formula, which is change over original, and then turn it into, and that's going to give me percent of change. But remember, I got to turn it into a percent because it's going to give me a decimal when I do that. Or I can work a proportion. I'm going to show you a trick on the proportion in a minute as well. Okay, so I'm going to come over here to solve this. Same thing. Well, the change, well, if I was 60 inches and I am now 66 inches, what changed? 6 inches, right? We can see that I went up 6 inches. So the change was 6 inches. What is the original height? How much was I? The first time there's 60 inches. Okay. So I know that 6 divided by 60, right? 6 divided by 60 is going to give me 0.1. I'm not done because this is a decimal and I have to turn it into a percent. Remember Dr. Pepper? I have a decimal. I want a percent. I got to go 1, 2 and build the percent sign. So 1, 2, it's going to equal 10%. Okay? Easy does it. Let's try it with a proportion. So here I'm going to do my inches over percent. So what was my original inches? Well, I was 60 inches tall. And that is 100%. That's my starting number. It's 100%. Here's the deal. I'm going to try a trick. I can either put that, I'm going to show you two different proportions. I could make this, we already know that it changed 6. So I could put that 6 inches here and then take 6 times 100, okay, 600 divided by 60, and it is going to give me 10. Or if I want to use the numbers that's in this proportion, I could actually do this. 60 inches is 100%. Well, they gave me the other number, which is 66. I could put that 66 here and do 66 times 100, which is going to give me 6,600, right? Then divide it by 60, and that's actually going to give me 110. Well, guys, I can't, I know I got to take that 100 out, right? So here's the thing. Anything over 100 is an increase. So whatever is more than 100 on your answer is the amount, the percent of change. So it's still 10%. Does that make sense? Either way, doesn't matter if you want to make it more than 100 and then subtract it, or you want to subtract it first and get just the 10. Either way will work. I liked leaving my numbers and then just realizing anything over 100 was the percent of change, or anything less than 100 was the percent of change whenever you're going decrease. Okay.